Hello students and welcome to video 6 in chapter 4.5, the 7 Ps of the marketing mix. So it feels like we've been going forever in this chapter, but we only have 2 videos left. So we've got this video in place and then we're going to do the final 3 in one video. So in the place part of the syllabus, there's only one learning objective, which is the importance of different types of distribution channels. And we've got about 5-6 slides in this chapter. So the first thing we're going to do is define this word place from the 7 Ps. So obviously the place is the 4th P in our list of the 7 Ps. And I would say it's the one of them which is the most confusing and easiest to get wrong. So let's define place and I'll tell you why it's confusing. So place is the process of how a product gets from the manufacturer to the final consumers. So actually place is the way of getting from the manufacturer to consumers. So it's not literally a place, it's a method of distribution that we're going to see. So it's the distribution channel, not a physical place. And another way of saying that is it's the journey the product goes through rather than a specific place on that journey. And so one example we're going to look at is, should a business sell only online or via a retailer? So if they sell online, then it's going to go directly from the producer to the consumer, or they can go via a retailer, which we're going to call an intermediary. Now, with the example of a retailer, they are actually selling in a physical place, which is a shop, but they don't necessarily need to. So that's a slightly confusing thing about place. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at 3 different types of distribution channels. So here we can define a distribution channel as a chain of intermediaries a product goes through from producer to consumer. So again, all it is how do we get from the producer to the consumer? Behind my head, there's another consumer there, so I don't necessarily need to move my head this time. And we're going to look at 3 different types, where it goes direct from producer to consumer. We can sell via a retailer, or we can sell via a wholesaler and a retailer. So in this video, we're going to look at these 3. We're going to define everything and we're going to look at some pros and cons. So the first one we're going to look at is direct selling. So direct selling is effectively when it goes straight from the producer or the manufacturer to the consumer. We can also call this a zero-level distribution channel, whereas distribution channel is again going from producer to consumer, and we call it zero level because there's nothing in between. And we're going to see that makes a bit more sense in a minute. So some examples here. I think a really good example is Amazon. So when Amazon produces products, they sell directly to consumers on their website. Now, we have to be careful with Amazon because if a third party sells their products on Amazon, then in that situation, Amazon is actually a retailer, an intermediary. So in this situation, it's got to be where the Amazon that they produce the products themselves. Plane tickets, again, this depends. So you can go to for example, the Lufthansa website and you can buy tickets from the Lufthansa website, and that would be direct selling. You can also go for a website like Expedia, and that would not be direct selling because Lufthansa is selling via Expedia, which is going to be the next example we look at. Some other examples are door-to-door. So some companies, this is probably more in the past, they would go around and literally just knock on people's door and try and sell products to them, or via telephone, mail order. And also these days, farmers markets. Farmers markets are where the farmer goes directly to the market and they'll meet consumers there and they'll buy them like that. Another good example is near my house. I have a milk dispenser. I'd never seen one of these before, but I live near a farm and I can go to this milk dispenser and I can get fresh milk straight from the farm. And they have like this thing, you put in a few euros and then you get your milk there. So we'll go through the pros and cons of direct selling pretty quickly. This one's going to have higher profit margins because there's no retailer. There's no one in between who's going to be taking margins. Because we're selling direct to the customers, we can kind of talk to the customers, whether online or in person. And we kind of have more control over pricing and promotion, as we're going to see a bit later on, because effectively we're making all those decisions ourselves. Some cons: less exposure. If we sell in a shop, then a lot more people are going to see our product. So actually getting people to see our product can be more difficult. We have to handle storage and distribution. So whenever we sell a product, we actually have to deliver the product ourselves rather than someone else doing it for us. And also, because we're a manufacturer, we're probably not specialized in selling. And so therefore, if we were to sell for a retailer, that's their job, is selling. And so we're losing out on their expertise. So moving on to retailer, and this will make a bit more sense when I talk about the expertise in selling, etc. So a retailer is called a single intermediary distribution channel, a very long word, but basically it just means we're using a retailer. And we can also call this a one-level distribution channel because we have one intermediary in getting from producer to consumer. And so this is selling to consumers via one intermediary. This is normally a retailer, but can also be an agent or a distributor. And some examples here would be things like a supermarket, a bookstore, or real estate agent. In the example I've got down below are more going to be about retailers, which is pretty much a shop, if you like. But an agent can also be a real estate agent. So if you're selling your house, it's likely you're going to use an agent, and then they will show potential customers. And so in this situation, they would be the intermediary. So let's use the example of a bookstore. So let's say you write your book and you consider direct selling. So if you wrote a book and you did direct selling, then you would effectively be trying to find customers yourselves. But in this situation, let's say you decide to sell via a bookstore, whether that's online or through a physical bookstore. So the pros of doing that, well, number one, you're going to be able to reach a wider range of customers. Some customers are going to come into the bookstore, not know your book, but then they'll see your book in theory as they walk around the shop. So more people are going to see your book. Customers can see and feel your product. I guess for a book, this is less important, but for food and electronics and furniture and things like that, it's obviously more important that customers can do that. Also, the retailer, the bookstore, is going to take care of storage and distribution. So if you sell the books yourselves, then you have to post them to everyone or give them to everyone, whereas the retailer will do those things for you. Some cons: the bookstore is obviously going to want to take some of your profit, so you're going to make less per book. And you also lose control of the marketing mix. So the bookstore is going to be able to sell the book for the price they want to. So they might sell it for a cheaper price than you want to, or promote it in a different way. This is assuming you haven't signed some sort of contract which limits those. And also the product is likely to be displayed next to the competition. So there might be books similar to yours, and obviously your book will be displayed next to them. So in theory, that could reduce the number of copies that you sell if people decide to buy the competition instead. Okay, on to the final one, which is the two intermediary distribution channel, which can also be called the two-level distribution channel, where level here is also the same word as intermediaries. And here we've got a wholesaler, basically. So manufacturers selling to customers via two intermediaries, and these two intermediaries will often be a wholesaler and a retailer. And so what the wholesaler here will do is they'll buy in bulk from a manufacturer, and then they'll sell smaller amounts to retailers. So the idea is, let's say you have a big business and you want to sell in Germany. Now, if you sell to supermarkets all around Germany, for example, then the distribution is going to be quite difficult. So what you could do is you could sell to a wholesaler in Germany who will then buy all the products, and then they'll do the distribution within Germany for you. And so the big advantage is they'll take care of the storage and the distribution. So it makes the distribution significantly easier. And it also means you've got a wider geographical reach because they're going to take care of that for you. Some cons of this are there's another intermediary to take profit because the wholesaler is obviously going to want their slice of the product. And in theory, you lose even more control over the marketing mix because you're probably selling in a different market. Then you're going to be losing control of that. So moving on to some general points about the distribution channels. So in general, the more intermediaries you use, the lower the profit margin. That's because every time you use an intermediary, that intermediary is a business and they're going to want to take a slice of profits. So in general, direct selling has the highest profit margin, but has the limitations we saw earlier. In general, retailers are going to want to display the product and allow communication with the customer. So if you sell in a supermarket or bookshop, then customers are going to get to interact with your products and get to know your product better. However, retailers reduce the control you have over marketing decisions. So if you sell in a bookshop or a supermarket, then those businesses are going to have control over price and promotion. So you lose control over how your product is marketed. And if you're trying to establish a brand image, that could be a negative. And then retailers and wholesalers will stock your product, which reduces stock holding costs. And they'll also control the whole distribution channel for you. And so if you sell via a supermarket or a wholesaler, then they'll look after those things for you. Now, one thing the manufacturers can do is they can actually control the whole distribution channel. So Walmart is a supermarket. In theory, they could buy a cow farm, and therefore they have guaranteed access to beef throughout their supermarkets. So final thing, factors to consider in determining methods of distribution. So let's say you've got a business. How do you know what the best way of doing it is? Well, firstly, cost. In order to use intermediaries, you need to have some profit margin. If the profit margins are already very tight, then maybe you can't use 2 intermediaries. You can just use 1, or maybe use 0 and sell online. How much control do you want over your brand? So if you're really, really keen on having a certain brand image, then you need to be very careful how many intermediaries you use, because obviously they're going to want to have control over those. Where are the customers? And so if customers are very spread out, then a wholesaler might be appropriate, because like I said, they're going to take care of the distribution. And finally, mass market versus niche market. If the product is mass market, then direct selling might not be possible, because if it's mass market, then you're going to have a lot of consumers. And so direct distributing the products to all of those consumers may be very expensive, logistically very difficult. So in those situations, wholesaler and retailer may be more appropriate. One final thing, it completely depends on the product. And so for some products, one distribution channel might be more appropriate. So you need to look at the product first. Right, that is it. I'll see you next time.